Welcome to another Growth Club session with Holistic Home Journey and me, of course, Crystal Kanata. I help parents break out of the older parenting styles of hitting, yelling, shaming, and kind of move into a more holistic approach through mindset shifts, tools, support. And so part of that is working on our own growth. And that's where Growth Club comes in. So we're working through our own childhood traumas, our own triggers, and we're learning how to apply these concepts from top personal growth books and healing books into our parenting and into our current lives. So we are currently reading How to Do the Work. And this is all about childhood trauma healing. It's actually about like being a self-healer. And so let's dive right in. Today we are talking about kind of coping mechanisms and how we cope, and how sometimes these coping mechanisms actually almost feel like part of our personality. And so I'm going to just dive right in. When we are going through trauma, okay, whether it is the harshest of physical trauma that you can imagine, or it is the opposite side of, wow, I didn't even realize that was calling me, that was causing me trauma, kind of thing, where it's comments and more emotional type stuff that comes up in the day-to-day, right? The types of things that we're trying to be conscious of while we're parenting. Whatever it is, you will naturally find ways to cope in the situation. Now, by coping, you might disassociate from your body, to not feel the pain. You might put up a front, or become a people pleaser, or you might withdraw. If you know that every time you go to talk to your parents about something, or every time you pass your parents in your house, they're going to nag you about something, or they're going to harp on you about something, or they're going to make fun of what you're wearing, or they're going to give you a hard time, you might tend to withdraw, you might tend to not share. And so all of these things that you use to get through those situations as they were happening to you almost become part of who you are, or at least that's how it feels, right? It's like, this is just how I am. I can just remove myself from pain. I thought that about myself for a long time. Wow, how cool. Like, I could just remove myself from my body. I didn't realize that was a coping mechanism. I didn't realize that I did that to remove myself from my body in traumatic times. I withdraw. I don't really talk about my emotions. Like, those types of things could be, not always, but could be stemming from you having to cope in the past. And so I'll just read you a quote from the book. So she's talking about psychologists sort of like studying stress and emotion. And she says they presented a theory of coping, which they defined as constantly changing cognitive behavior efforts to manage specific external and internal demands that exceed the resources of a person. In other words, coping is a learned strategy to manage the profound unease in the body and mind that stress generates. So in those moments, your body and your mind is saying, I don't know how to handle this. I can't be present here right now. I can't be me. I can't be authentic right now. What can I do that's going to cause me less trauma? Physical, mental, emotional. What can I do to shrink myself, to escape from myself in these moments? And those become your coping mechanisms. And as we grow and as we turn into adults, and we have our own families, that will show, or can show, through withdrawing. So think about how you, or withdrawing, anger, lashing out, intense like overload when things feel like they're not in control. It can look like keeping things from your spouse, or not feeling like you can speak to your spouse, or walking on eggshells when really your spouse hasn't given you a reason to do that. It can look like confidence issues. It can look in so many different ways. And that's because these coping mechanisms have almost translated and became so ingrained in us that we just think that that's the way that we are. And the problem with that is that when we just keep using old coping mechanisms in our current life, when those traumas are no longer happening to us, it keeps the body in this like trauma cycle. So I'll read you one more quote today. So it says, the cycle of unresolved trauma, repetition of maladaptive coping behaviors, and consistent denial of self allows the pain to live on in our mind and body, where it can eventually make us sick. And, if you are reading the book with us, then we're about to dive in, and we'll probably touch on it next week in Growth Club. That these stresses that we carry with us through repeating cycles of trauma that aren't actually happening now, but our body is repeating the effects of that trauma in our day-to-day, lead to not only just, and I'm saying just very lightly, right? Not only, the anger and the lashing out and the I'm so triggered when my child whines for something, and I can't help myself but to hit my kid, or I can't talk to my spouse, I have to just run away when conflict arises. Like, it also manifests in like physical pain, physical disease of your system. And so we really want to start paying attention to which of our personality traits, which of our behaviors now are really just a response to what was happening in the past. And let's translate this whole thing into parenting, right? So if we experience something in our past that we are continually repeating, so think of like a trauma that you had, okay? Think of something that really affected you, that you came up with some behavior to deal with it, whether it was the physical trauma that you were leaving your body to escape, or whether it was emotional trauma. Your parents was making fun of you all the time, and you learned to tune people out, and you have really low confidence, or whatever it is. Like, try to think of, or you don't dress yourself because somebody's just going to make fun of you, right? Like, think of those things, like what behaviors do you do? And then really just start thinking about is that truly you? Does that feel like it's serving you right now? So if you think about, okay, every time my child, I'm trying to think of an example. Every time my child doesn't like what I made for food for that day, it's really triggering for me. I start yelling, screaming. I force them to sit at the table and eat their whole food. Is that really you? Is that really like your authentic self? Does that feel right to you? Does that feel good to you when you're done doing it? Does that like sit right with your authentic self? Or is that your inner child trying to protect, because maybe when you were a kid, you would get in deep trouble if you didn't finish your food. So now your inner child sees your child not finishing their food and is like, no, you're going to finish it because otherwise there's consequences, right? And so now, almost in an effort to protect your child, you're having these trauma responses come out because your insides are like, oh my gosh, this is happening again. It's all happening again. I remember this trauma from my childhood and it's all coming up again. And now you are repeating that cycle to try to cope. And in repeating that cycle to try to cope, you're actually passing that trauma down to your child. And so if we want that trauma cycle to end with us, we have to look at those moments, right? So assignment for this week, look at the moments in your day, like the one example that I just gave. Look at moments of your day where things consistently feel stressful. You feel like you're really up in arms with your child or your spouse. You feel like every single time this situation comes up, you react a certain way, your child reacts a certain way, it ends a certain way. At the end of that day, you're left going over it in your mind, you don't feel good about it. Like, find places in your day that you don't feel good about. Okay. And those are the places that we want to start to look and say, okay, am I doing this? Am I forcing my child to eat their food? Am I making my child wear certain clothes when they go out? Am I, not allowing my child to do certain things? Or am I not doing certain things because that's what feels right to me? That's what's serving me in my life right now? Or am I doing it as a response to old traumas or old situations that have happened to me? And if the answer is, you know what, this doesn't feel like my authentic self, this feels like I'm just repeating a cycle because this is what I know and this is what my body knows, that would be a place to start making change. That would be a place to start saying, okay, let me try something else. Let me see if I can get creative here. Let me try a couple of different things. It's not like you're going to wake up, see somebody's video on TikTok and be like, oh, all of a sudden I know exactly what's going to work for me and my family. No, that's not what's going to happen. But what you can do is you can start trying things. So if something doesn't feel right, you start trying something else. Does this feel authentic and right to me, or does it feel like I'm repeating a cycle? Try something else. Does this feel authentic to me, or am I repeating a cycle? And you do that until something says, you know what? I don't care what anybody looking from the outside thinks. I feel good in this decision. I feel safe in this decision. I feel authentic in this decision. At the end of the day, I feel like I really did my best job as mom today or as wife today. Then you know that you're getting closer to your authentic self. And when everybody in your family can be more in their authentic self, that's where like the whole concept of holistic parenting comes in. It's like, who are you as a true person, not trying to mask or hide or repeat cycles in any way. Just who are you as an authentic person interacting with your child who is an individual authentic person, right? So it's pretty interesting stuff. If you want to get the book, you can. How to do the work. If you want to watch all the replays of Growth Club, make sure that you're part of the VIP access membership inside of the community. If you can't do the VIP access membership, then make sure that you're part of the general membership, which is free. And I do live Q&A in there every week. But if you are in the VIP and you are going through this growth club with us, I would love for you to post in that private group, what has come up for you after watching this session? Is there anything that you say, you know what, I always just thought I was quirky like this, or I was angry like this, or I was, whatever it is. I just always thought this was me, but now I'm realizing that maybe this was my trauma. And actually, I'm going to make these changes to try and get away from that cycle. I would love to know kind of what you're doing in your healing. So thank you for being here. I will see you Thursday for Q&A, and make sure you go back and watch the other episodes if you haven't been caught up. Next week, we are diving into like how trauma is manifesting physically in your body. So I can't wait for that. Bye.